This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. The countdown is on to U.S. President Donald Trump slapping Canada with punishing tariffs. The White House said Tuesday that Trump hasn't changed his mind and tariffs will begin in days. If it happens, Canada will respond with retaliatory tariffs and, as Radio Canada learned today, billions in financial relief. The CBC's Ian Fraze reports.
In this Winnipeg laboratory developing new ways to treat wounds, the U.S. market is everything.
100% of our sales are going to the U.S. If we have tariffs and that slows down the deployment of our technology, that's terrible for us.
The feds are planning billions of dollars in help. Similar to how Canada responded to the pandemic, this relief will go to businesses and people hurt by the tariffs.
Any support is always welcome.
Otherwise, Mark Edwards says some of Kane Biotech's manufacturing will move to America.
And that's our long-term mitigation plan, but that's a disaster for Canada and really not what we're trying to do.
The White House says President Trump isn't bluffing.
February 1st is still on the books.
However, one business leader in Manitoba says tariffs aren't inevitable.
There's a number of other steps that we would suggest make a lot more sense before we ever get to that.
Like strengthening the province's economy urgently.
We've got critical minerals, we've got green energy, we've got all this opportunity in a province like Manitoba.
Wab Kinu's government is promising financial aid as well and preparing for the worst.
We got a budget with, all systems go, and we're continuing with trade with the U.S., and we're building another contingency where, we have to support businesses and we have to respond to an economic slowdown.
An economist says Canada must respond to tariffs with some sort of financial aid.
Businesses are flexible. They can adapt, but they need time and they need resources.
Responding to U.S. tariffs is a delicate act and not something that can be tested in a lab. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The relationship between a long-standing curling club and the city of Winnipeg has hit some rocks. The Granite Curling Club says a plan to build housing on its parking lot threatens its future. But as CBC's Cameron McLean reports, city officials say the plans shouldn't come as a surprise.
Folks have been throwing rocks at the Granite Curling Club for more than 100 years. The club's iconic building is on the banks of the Assiniboine River. Earlier this month, notices went up about a public hearing to rezone a portion of this west parking lot to build affordable housing. Club board members say the notice caught them off guard.
First of all, we're not against affordable housing by any means, but there are concerns that the Granite has with losing the west parking lot that we've asked the city and the developer to address, and we don't feel like we've had those questions answered.
The city owns the building and the parking lot. Last year, they opened discussions with the club about plans to build 111 units, a portion of which would be rent geared to income on the west lot. Funding for the project is coming from the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund. The city's acting manager for the fund says they want to work out a deal that supports the club while addressing housing needs.
It's a little bit unfortunate that they're using a fear of loss of parking on some of their parking lot as a means to stop a long-term affordable housing development when we're in the midst of a housing crisis.
The club board worries the loss of parking will lead to a loss of members. Area Councillor Sherry Rowlands questions the claim that the city has not been transparent about its plans.
This did not come as a surprise. Indeed, I sat down with the board and talked about the plans here, including, a line of revenue that they wouldn't otherwise have access to.
The city and developer have proposed sharing revenue from the new building to pay for maintenance of the club. There may also be parking available in the new development and across the street in the Canada Life parking lot. But Board Secretary Christian Pierce says the club needs a firm commitment.
Until we actually have something in writing and a firm number, again, the Granite can't seriously consider that offer because it's just talk.
The Granite Curling Club has asked its supporters to sign a petition calling on the city to cancel a public hearing on the project and resume negotiations. That hearing is scheduled to go ahead February 6th. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A historic Winnipeg site will soon get a major redevelopment. The Forks Renewal Corporation put out a contract to redesign the Alexander Docks. The docks were built in 1929 and served as a major shipping hub in the city. But its condition has declined over the years, and a section was fenced off in 2015.
The Alexander Dock has been a derelict site for, 10 plus years. It's fenced off, it's a mess. Something is needed. The status quo is not working and not what any of us would like. And so this is why we've sort of joined into this conversation and to be a part of this with the city to help renew this area.
Consultations with businesses and people living nearby will be held this spring. The demo and construction of a new dock is expected to cost around $2 million. Manitoba veterinarians are no longer allowed to perform a cosmetic procedure for dogs known as tail docking. It's removing the tail primarily to conform the dog's appearance to traditional breed standards. The Manitoba Veterinary Medical Association voted for the ban Friday at the group's annual meeting. A Winnipeg vet says tail docking inflicts pain to the animal for no clear reason.
What it does is causes some undue pain and harm to young puppies, potentially causes long-term neurological consequences, and certainly limits the dog's ability to properly communicate with other dogs and people because they're no longer able to wag.
The ban follows a multi-year consultation process with multiple stakeholders. Breeders, however, are still able to continue with the practice. We're now learning more about the closure of a Canadian farm goods chain we told you about yesterday. Peavey Mart is closing all its stores across the country and seeking creditor protection. It puts an end to days of speculation about the chain's future from its customers, who now have to look for alternatives. CBC's Alexander Silberman reports.
Jeez, disappointing.
At Peavey Mart stores across Canada, shoppers headed in to find a bargain, met by signs announcing the retail chain's looming closure.
It'll be a big change. We're going to miss it for sure.
Late last week, the Alberta-based company first announced plans to restructure, shutting down nearly 24 stores in Ontario and Nova Scotia. Then on Monday night, Peavey Industries LP, the chain's owner, told shoppers it would be shutting down nationwide, with some closures beginning immediately. In a statement, the company says it faced unprecedented challenges, citing record low consumer confidence, inflation, and rising costs. Though some say the mid-sized chain may have expanded too fast at a time in which it faced tough competition.
Brick and mortar is a hard game right now, no matter who you are. But if you have something that can be replicated online in cheaper, I think it's really tough.
Peavey Mart had 90 locations across the country. Its origins date back to the 60s, and it's been Canadian-owned since 1975.
I'm so sad they're closing. It's the best store.
Rural shoppers like Melanie Roth depend on the store for a range of specialty supplies. Clothing for farming and gardening, fencing, even live chickens. A unique farm focus few retailers offer.
This store brings community. I love this store. And you know, I don't mind going to Walmart and things like that, but I love going to places. This is what keeps a small town together.
Fans of Peavey Mart say the store was an essential service for many rural communities, making it easy to quickly pick up everything from a bag of horse feed to a piece of farm equipment. And when it closes its doors, many say their best alternative will now be to shop online. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Uxbridge, Ontario.
Well, for January, it was another pretty balmy day for us here in Winnipeg, but we've also been on a bit of a weather roller coaster these last few weeks. Now, Riley Lachuk is off this week. Ethan Williams is filling in for us. And Ethan, how did things look around the rest of Manitoba?
Well, Brittany, quite a spread of temperatures throughout the province. Above freezing through Tuesday in Winnipeg and the south. You get into portions of the north and the northern Interlake, down into the -10 to -15 range, and up along the Hudson Bay coast and the territorial border, struggling to get above that -25 mark. That is the result of a cold front that has been moving through Manitoba, and that's been picking up the winds for a lot of locations as well. Look at this, anywhere between 60 and 80 kilometer-an-hour gusts throughout the south as we've headed at times through Tuesday. But the good news is the wind's going to be diminishing, and as we get into Wednesday morning, bit of a chillier start, but still not too bad with a mix of sun and cloud at 8 a.m. Cloud starts building in a little more by noon as our temperatures increase to around -4 by mid-afternoon. That's when we have the chance of some flurries moving back in once again. I'll let you know how much snow is on the way in your full forecast coming up.
All right, thanks, Ethan. He died a convicted killer. Now Russell Woodhouse's family wants his name cleared, nearly 50 years after he was initially put behind bars. More on that story coming up straight ahead. Stay with us. For more than 50 years, a man from Peavey First Nation has been considered a convicted killer. Now Russell Woodhouse's name is one final step from being cleared and in the process, possibly making history. CBC's Caitlin Gowerluck has more.
Today, Clarence Woodhouse spends his time with his family, teaching his grandson Soto. His language that's formed an important part of his story and helped prove his innocence in a crime he always said he didn't do. Last year, he became one of 3 men exonerated in a 1973 murder. But for Clarence's family, the journey isn't over. His brother, Russell Woodhouse, was convicted of manslaughter in the same case. Russell's name could soon be cleared too, more than a decade after he died. His family is waiting for a final decision from Canada's Justice Minister.
I'd be happy to clear his name.
They were part of a group of 4 young men from Peavey First Nation convicted of killing 40-year-old Ting Fong Chan. Chan was fatally beaten and stabbed one night as he walked home from work.
Russell Woodhouse was still just a teenager when he was arrested in 1973. And growing up here in Peavey First Nation, he spoke mostly Soto or Ojibwe. But like the other men charged in the case, he was convicted based largely on a police confession supposedly given in fluent English, even though he barely spoke the language.
Russell was convicted because he was forced to put his signature to a false confession in a language that he did not speak.
Just one of the red flags for the group that has spent years working to exonerate the men. From an investigation that zeroed in on the young men with no evidence linking them to the crime, to police brutality, and ultimately a trial that Innocence Canada's James Lockyer says was marred by systemic racism at every turn.
You'd think in 1974 things would have been better than this, but they weren't. The racism in the criminal justice system was overwhelming.
Hi, Alvin.
Oh, hi.
Decades before Innocence Canada got involved, the chief of the men's community sounded the alarm. But Alvin Thompson's calls in the 1970s were ignored. With a small group of supporters, he tried to bring attention to the case, but no one was listening.
Not the court system, not the police, no one. No, it was a dead-end case in every which way we turned.
Brian Anderson was one of the men finally declared innocent in the case recently. For him, exoneration felt good, but it isn't enough. The years he spent in prison, that time he missed with his family.
Like, apology just doesn't do it. Like, I can't put apology into my bank account.
But the Woodhouse family is still waiting to hear that apology one last time. While Clarence was exonerated this past October, Russell is, for now, still considered guilty. But that's not how Clarence and his family remember him.
Very nice, kind, loving. The laughter, the jokes. No. Yeah. I'm gonna miss those times.
Unlike the other men involved in the case, Russell Woodhouse won't be around to see his name cleared. He died of cancer in 2011 and is buried here in his home community of Peavey First Nation.
His case is being looked at by the federal government. Innocence Canada says it's the first time a justice minister is reviewing the case of a person who's died. A Justice Department spokesperson says the review of Russell's conviction is ongoing, but wouldn't give more details. An exoneration would mean the world to Russell's family, and they know it would to him, too.
We would have been happy, yeah.
One more step towards closing a painful chapter in their family's story. Caitlin Gowerluck, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A new pickleball facility is set to open later this year in Winnipeg that will be the first of its kind in Canada. Pickleball Canada says they are renovating a building in Winnipeg's Kenaston Common, which should open in August. It's a subsidiary of an American pickleball franchise company. The company says with the number of facilities it hopes to open across the country, it wants to become the standard for pickleball courts.
And a place where people can feel really good at what they do and host championships. So ours is, we feel, a slightly different level than many of the other courts. However, all of the courts that are playing currently are really needed to help the growth and the development of the sport.
He says they're looking at a second location, either in the north part of the city or St. Vital. The Pickleball Club of Winnipeg is also opening a facility in Headingley. Parks Canada says it's not feasible to get rid of the zebra mussels in Clear Lake at Riding Mountain National Park. Parks Canada found juvenile zebra mussels attached to docks and other structures at the east side of the lake in the fall. Other mussels were found earlier in the Boat Cove area near Wasagaming. Parks Canada says it received scientific and Indigenous advice about eradicating the invasive species and has determined it is not feasible. Well, we've had above seasonal temperatures here in Winnipeg, but as we hover around the freezing mark, it also means the threat of snow. Ethan Williamson now with the latest. Ethan.
Well, Brittany, that cold front that I mentioned earlier, bringing through some cloud cover and even some flurries at times through southern Manitoba. We had some heavier snow, of course, moving Monday night into Tuesday through northern sections of the province, but that, by and large, has now moved out. And again, it's just kind of some lingering light snow in southern sections, which could continue as that cold front continues to move through as we go into Tuesday and or the later hours Tuesday into early Wednesday. It's mostly in southwestern sections, I think, where we could see a little bit of that. But the front then moves through by the wee hours of Wednesday morning. High pressure begins to move in. That's really going to clear things out for a lot of us. But as that starts to move away as we get into the afternoon on Wednesday, cloud cover starts building in and the possibility of some flurries through southern Manitoba as we get into the later afternoon and early evening hours. Then a more widespread a pattern or period of snow is going to start moving in as we get overnight Wednesday into Thursday as this next low pressure system starts moving in. I think for Winnipeg and the Red River Valley, though, largely unscathed by that as it moves into northwestern Ontario and some colder air from high pressure moves in for the weekend. So overnight as we go Tuesday into Wednesday, again, I think about 1 to 3 centimeters in southwestern sections, a little more substantial snowfall, upwards of maybe 2 to 4 centimeters in a line from the Paw through to Little Grand Rapids as we get that system moving in Thursday through Friday. Now, winds, of course, have definitely been an issue as we've gone through Tuesday. But as we get into Wednesday and high pressure moves in, things start to calm down again. Although as that next system moves in on Thursday, we'll see those pick up again, 40 to 50 kilometers an hour gusts possible as we get into Thursday. And I know for pups like Dolly, they've just been waiting to get outside and maybe enjoy some nice dog walking weather. And I think for Wednesday, things will be not too bad. Warming up as we get into the afternoon. Some cloud cover with the some possible flurries as we get later into the afternoon, but the wind definitely going to be less of an issue. But again, after some afternoon flurries for Wednesday, we'll miss that system of snow, I think, moving into southern Manitoba as we get into Thursday, at least in the Winnipeg area. That's when our winds start picking up a little bit again. But then a significant temperature drop as we get into Friday with the clouds clearing. Looks like we may have more of those colder days coming up a little later in the 7-day forecast. Brittany.
Thanks, Ethan. We have much more to come straight ahead. Stay with us. The public inquiry looking into foreign election meddling has submitted its final report. The commissioner says in spite of attempts by foreign countries to interfere in the past 2 Canadian elections, it didn't affect which party came into power. But as Ashley Burke reports, the public's trust has taken a hit, and the commissioner is now trying to clear up a cloud of suspicion hanging over parliamentarians.
After a 15-month investigation, this commissioner says there's no doubt countries like China and India are trying to meddle in Canadian politics. But she found no evidence Canadian parliamentarians are conspiring to help them.
While I saw evidence of some concerning behavior, the evidence does not show any MPs plotting with foreign states against Canada's interests.
The government tasked Marie-Josée Augue with investigating foreign interference in the past 2 federal elections. She spoke to more than 100 witnesses, including the Prime Minister, his inner circle, and officials, and reviewed tens of thousands of classified documents. One of her jobs was to weigh in on an explosive report by a committee of parliamentarians with top-secret security clearance. It alleged that some unnamed parliamentarians are semi-witting or witting participants of foreign states trying to meddle in Canadian democracy.
Such phenomena remain marginal and so far appear to have been largely ineffective.
Augue said there are legitimate concerns about parliamentarians having problematic relationships with foreign officials, showing poor judgment or acting naive. She said some may have benefited without even knowing it, but it hasn't had much of an impact.
Nor have I seen any evidence to suggest that there are currently so-called traitors in Parliament.
The commissioner was very, very straightforward.
This expert says that key finding throws cold water on the past report's allegation.
Now Commissioner Augue has come out and essentially said, look, we need to step back, take a deep breath. The evidence is not as consequential or significant as we thought.
The commissioner also looked into how the government handled foreign interference and found that at times it acted too slowly to respond. Information sometimes didn't get to the right people, and called the government a poor communicator, saying there needed to be much more transparency to let the public know what was going on. She's now issued more than 50 recommendations and says that some of them could be addressed before the election this year. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Prime Minister Trudeau has signed an agreement to provide nuclear technology to Poland. Afterwards, he and Prime Minister Tusk held a news conference in Warsaw. As Evan Dyer reports, much of the focus became about U.S. billionaire Elon Musk.
The tenor of their remarks during their news conference, both from Prime Minister Trudeau and Prime Minister Tusk, had a lot more to do with the threats to democracy. And of course, they're speaking in light of recent events in the United States, Elon Musk's notorious gesture that he made during the inauguration of Donald Trump, and of course also reflecting on yesterday's events that were marked here, the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. And both leaders sounded a warning about threats to democracy in Europe and in North America.
Social media companies, amongst others, have a responsibility to ensure that messages of hatred and incitement to violence have no space or no amplifications within their platforms.
Poland is, of course, the country that lost the largest proportion of its population in the Second World War, that suffered the most under Nazi occupation. And so there was quite a bit of shock here at that gesture by Elon Musk, which was really unambiguously seen here as intended to be a Nazi salute. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Warsaw.
It's been just over a week since Donald Trump took office, and thousands of people have already been arrested in immigration enforcement raids across the country. But White House officials say this is just the beginning. CBC's Chris Reyes has more from New York.
This was the scene in the early hours of Tuesday at various locations in New York City. Newly confirmed Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, posted on social media arresting some criminal aliens this morning in NYC. Thank you to the brave officers involved. Federal immigration officials were accompanied by New York City officers. New York is a sanctuary city, which means that it limits its cooperation with federal immigration officials when it comes to deportation orders for undocumented immigrants. However, the city makes exceptions for those who have committed violent crimes. Since taking office, the Trump administration has deported more than 500 people. The White House did not confirm if everyone deported or detained so far have criminal records.
He is focused on launching the largest mass deportation operation in American history of illegal criminals. And if you are an individual, a foreign national, who illegally enters the United States of America, you are, by definition, a criminal.
Of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office, can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
Earlier this week, Trump's border czar Tom Homan said expect deportations to increase and to widen in scope.
Right now it's concentrating public safety threats, national security threats. That's a smaller population. So we're going to do this on priority base, as President Trump's promised, but as that aperture opens, there'll be more arrests nationwide. If you're in the country illegally, you're on the table, because it's not okay to, violate laws of this country.
Immigration advocates in the U.S. began to mount challenges against Trump's policies, including an order to fast-track some deportations, bypassing court proceedings. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Canada's seafood industry is keeping a close eye on whether Trump's 25% U.S. tariffs will go ahead this Saturday. The BC Seafood Alliance is urging people to buy local as the producers try to protect local jobs. Mira Baines looks at whether that's enough to avert the potential impact.
BC's wild-caught seafood is world-renowned, with about 60% of the industry's exports going to the U.S. But now U.S. President Donald Trump's threat of 25% tariffs on Canadian imports is looming large. The head of the BC Seafood Alliance says she's hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst as the February 1st deadline approaches.
I worry very much that we will be looking at layoffs in both processing plants and for fish harvesters. We would simply have to tie up vessels because there would not be a market.
Burridge went to Ottawa last Friday for urgent talks with Fisheries and Oceans Canada, Agriculture Canada, and Global Affairs Canada. It's still unclear exactly what will happen on Saturday.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada because they're allowing vast numbers of people. Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
BC's premier has not ruled out countermeasures if those tariff threats go through. He's urged people to buy local.
When you're at the grocery store and you have a chance to buy a product right now, you're looking carefully at the labels to support Canadian jobs and to support Canada at this critical time.
However, selling to the domestic market will likely not be enough to manage the shock of tariffs.
We would hope that people in BC buy more halibut, and quite likely the price would be lower, which might be helpful. But I can't see selling a lot of our halibut to Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, because they have Atlantic halibut.
The BC Seafood Alliance says the industry is hoping for a reprieve at least until April to deal with American customers who rely on their products. The group says there's also some hope there could be an exemption for Canadian food products. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
There are many factors that can shorten our life expectancy, including having ADHD. That's according to new research out of the United Kingdom. As CBC's Jennifer Yoon reports, researchers hope the new data can lead to earlier diagnosis and better treatments for adults living with the disorder.
I found out I had ADHD this year, too. Does anybody have that?
For the stand-up comic, joking about his ADHD is a coping mechanism. But he wonders
I'm turning 50 this year.
What his life would have been like if he had received treatment earlier.
That life.
People with attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder have a hard time focusing, and they're at higher risk of health issues like reduced sleep, substance use, and suicide. All factors that can contribute to a shorter lifespan.
British researchers found men with ADHD lived 4.5 to 9 fewer years than their counterparts. For women, it was 6.5 to nearly 11 years on average.
I was surprised by the amount. People with ADHD are more likely to take risks and are more likely to struggle with addiction to alcohol, cigarettes, or recreational drugs.
But he stresses the findings may not reflect those with mild symptoms or those without a diagnosis. This psychiatrist says he's not surprised. He's hoping those who need help and a diagnosis can more easily get it.
This will probably lead to identifying ADHD as a legitimate medical illness that does compromise people's longevity.
Better, good cat.
And there are treatments and lifestyle changes that can help.
Yeah, good job.
Like regular exercise, which can be difficult for people with ADHD who struggle with coordination and concentration.
Well, we know that physical activity can help to mitigate some of those modifiable risk factors. So what we're hoping is that the people that we teach over time will stay active.
You could be whatever you want.
Therapy and medication can also help those with ADHD lead full, healthy lives.
Amazing.
Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, have you ever wondered what it would feel like to sit in the orchestra? A new onstage experience puts you right in the heart of the symphony. We'll take you there straight after the break. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Northeastern BC saw a record number of magnitude 3 earthquakes last year. Many have been linked to an increase in fracking for a new pipeline, leaving some voicing concerns their homes are in jeopardy. Susan Ormiston has that story.
We are bearing the risk, and they are saying, don't worry.
But Richard Kabzums is worried. Just over a kilometre from his backyard, an oil and gas company, Invasive, is building a pad for 28 wells to horizontally drill and frack for natural gas beginning next month.
To build that close to us and then directionally drill underneath our houses in this area just didn't seem to be a good idea.
Fracking sends pressurized water, chemicals and sand into rock to dislodge oil and gas deposits. If it hits a fault, it can cause an earthquake. So can disposing the vast volumes of water. Kabzums has felt smaller ones before.
It felt like a truck was hitting the side of our house and the engine rumbling. So this deep, low rumbling and things would shift.
Fracking for natural gas here is booming, projected to double in the Montney Formation to feed a new pipeline carrying natural gas to the coast for export.
The more fracking we do, the more oil and gas we take, the more earthquakes we will have, and the larger is the chance that one of those earthquakes will have an undesirable consequence. It's a trade-off.
Kabzums sent 6 letters to the company. 9 of his neighbors signed a petition directed at the BC Energy Regulator.
Our house is built on a cement slab, floating slab, and it has in-floor heating. And if there is ever any damage to that, we don't know what our recourse would be.
In one response, Invasive said, numerous studies in Canada have concluded these events have no impact on health, safety, or the environment. Regulations say at magnitude 3 or above, operators have to pause fracking and investigate, but that won't eliminate a bigger one, says Atkinson.
If it just lights up right away and gives you a magnitude 4 or a 5 as its very first salvo, the traffic light won't work.
What people don't realize is that there's a human cost to this gas. They see a reward, we see risk.
Susan Ormiston, CBC News, near Fort St. John, BC.
Atomic scientists have moved the so-called Doomsday Clock to the closest it's been to midnight.
Because the world is already perilously close to the precipice, any move towards midnight should be taken as an indication of extreme danger and an unmistakable warning.
It's now at 89 seconds before midnight, the symbolic point of how close humanity is to global annihilation. That's 1 second closer than it was last year. The reasons include Russia's nuclear threats after its invasion of Ukraine and the ongoing crisis in the Middle East. The clock was created in 1947 during the Cold War tensions, a way to warn the public about how humankind was edging towards destroying the Earth. Let's check in with Ethan Williams for another look on our forecast.
Well, our jet stream pattern going to be telling us a lot about the weather that's to come, not only temperature-wise, but precipitation-wise, too. We're southern Manitoba, at least. We're south of the jet stream, so that warmer air will continue to be with us for these next couple of days as you see Winnipeg and most of the south is going to be below that jet stream. But colder air continues to move in through northern sections of the province. A couple of weather systems coming on Thursday and then into the weekend going to ride this jet stream and bring some snowfall through portions of the Inner Lake as we get through Thursday, and then likely bringing some snow to southern Manitoba as we get into the weekend. And then those colder temperatures dropping further south, including into the Winnipeg area, as that jet stream drops a little further south as we head into the latter part of the work week, into the weekend, and into the beginning of next week. But for now, temperatures remaining above seasonal for many of us. A bit of a range of temperatures as we go kind of into tonight and into tomorrow, closer to minus 20 if you're in northwestern Ontario and closer to the Ontario border in eastern Manitoba as we get some clearing skies. And you go further west and we have some more cloud cover in place with the possibility tonight again of some flurries or light snow in western sections where we might even see just minus single digits. For northern Manitoba, though, again, that's where that cold air has really started to move in. And for a lot of locations struggling today to get above the minus 25 mark, it's going to be a chilly night down into the minus 30 30s, feeling closer to minus 40 at times with a little bit of wind. But around northern sections of the Inner Lake, some cloud cover going to keep you away from those frigid conditions. As we get into Wednesday, though, we're not going to pull up much temperature-wise in far northern locations and along the Hudson Bay coast, but we'll get into those minus single digits in the cloud cover through northern sections of the Inner Lake. For southern Manitoba, I think for some of us, especially further east, we'll be starting the day with a kind of a sun-cloud mix, but then that cloud cover starts building in as we head throughout the afternoon. And I think for a lot of us, we're going to be seeing those temperatures that get nice and warm, though. And as you can see by the commute home Wednesday, many of us getting up into those minus single digits, kind of in between freezing and minus 5. Northwestern Ontario still back closer to minus 10, but that's where we have that cloud cover starting to move in and some flurries on the way as that snow begins to move in for a lot of us as we head overnight into Thursday. I'll have a full look at the 7-day forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ethan. It's being touted as an immersive musical experience. For the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra's latest show, the audience is taking to the stage alongside the musicians. It's called From the Inside Out, and it starts tonight at the Centennial Concert Hall. CBC got a sneak peek.
I am Daniel Reiskin, music director of the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. I am in the middle, I'm elevated, and the orchestra members are not in front of me, they're all around me. And so are the audience members. They're all around me in circle, and it's not like there's orchestra first all together and then audience around it. It's practically one musician, one audience member. 2 musicians, 3 audience members. 1 musician, 4 audience members. We're all really thrown around the stage, and all the spaces between the musicians are filled by the audience members.
What is the experience that you hope the audience gets out of this?
First of all, it's an opportunity to hear the orchestra the way the musicians hear themselves on stage. Secondly, it's an opportunity to be more physically involved with the sound that musicians produce. It's also an opportunity to see the instruments the musicians are playing much closer and to get into almost the technical things, like what is happening when a oboist is taking his reed into the mouth and how all the keys are working, how the musicians breathe when they play their string instruments, the mouthpieces go into the trombones and trumpet. They get to hear things that they normally don't hear sitting in the concert hall because they sit so close to the instrument. They might hear more of harp or horn and less of the second violins or less of a general sound. But it's a unique opportunity also to see what musicians are reacting to when working with a conductor. It's a unique opportunity to see how musicians react to each other on stage. Because usually, in a normal setup, we have an orchestra musicians on stage, then there's an invisible barrier, and kind of across the street from them, there's an audience members that are listening to the ready product. But here, everyone can get into the kitchen, into the laboratory where we actually make this happen.
I'm Alex Conway. I play flute and piccolo with the WSO, and I'm here performing with the WSO for the Inside Out performance. We haven't done anything like this before, so we're sitting a lot further apart than we usually are, which makes things a little bit more difficult to hear. But to have our audience in between us, I think is equal parts exciting and scary. As musicians, we train to play for people who are, I'd say, at least 10 feet away, if not much, much more in this hall. So thinking about how to adjust the way we play so that it's a great experience for people both far away and up close.
What are you excited about for this performance?
I'm just really excited for the audience to have our perspective, right? To be able to feel what the musicians feel when we're on stage, to be able to see the conductor from our perspective is going to be, I think, a real treat for the audience.
It's a wonderful opportunity also to build a community around the musicians of the orchestra, because we're normally many of them are kind of nameless because they're part of a larger group. But this is an opportunity to maybe even strike a little conversation during the break or something, not while they're playing. We have to put on the sign, don't talk to driver while driving, don't talk to musician while playing. But that's an idea. It's a very playful, very direct, very relaxed, very informal way of making music and consuming music, where everything is just about fun.
Can you tell us about what's going to be performed?
And for this concert, we chose pieces that are well known by both the orchestra and the audience. A suite from the famous and very much loved ballet by Tchaikovsky, Swan Lake. Symphony by Schubert, No. 7, a finished symphony of only 2 movements, but incredibly beautiful. And of course, we can't stay away from a famous movie music by John Williams. So we are treating everyone with a Cowboys Overture by John Williams. And these are Canadian cowboys, by the way.
Are you planning to do this again?
Absolutely. We hope that it will, like really settle and people will understand how much joy they can have out of it. And we're going to do it on a number of occasions next season and hope that it will really, the word will be spread and the buzz will be there and people will flock in big numbers to our concert.
Still ahead, Ethan is back with a last check on our forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. It's not summer yet, but the Manitoba government is trying to get you out into the province's parks. Entry into provincial parks is free for the month of February. The province's parks offer a variety of trails and activities from cross-country skiing, fat biking, snowshoeing, and hiking. And the very first Manitoba Winter Trails Day will be celebrated Saturday, February 8th.
Well, after some possible afternoon flurries for Wednesday, we'll clear out a bit for Thursday, getting a bit breezier. And then our temperatures take a tumble, albeit brief, for Friday. Another resurgence in temperatures for Saturday, but that's when Winnipeg, we could get a few centimeters of snow with another system moving through. Some lingering flurries for Sunday as temperatures drop, and those brisk northwest winds will make it feel a little bit colder, especially at night as we drop well into the minus 20s. And then we stay there for Monday and Tuesday with some partly sunny conditions for Monday and then cloud cover building back in for Tuesday. Although it looks like the cold snap that's coming up here, Brittany, shouldn't be too long-lived. And at this point, we look to be avoiding those minus 30 temperatures in Winnipeg overnight.
Thanks, Ethan. Well, a dog in Kamloops, BC is in the running to become Canada's favorite pet, and for good reason. 9-year-old Jet can do all kinds of useful things like carrying groceries and sorting recycling. Here's today's Daily Lift.
My name is Derek Moulter, and I am currently sitting beside my son, Jet. Can I help you with recycling? He's a 9-year-old German Shepherd that I've trained up to a little bit higher level than you typically see in the average household. You know, just over the years that we've been doing it, I don't even have to tell him which bin it goes in anymore. He just knows. He flips up the garbage can for garbage. You know, he's my rock star. Come here. Hey, thanks on that one. He lets himself in the house. Once he's done outside, he turns around, closes the door behind him. You know, go bring me my shoes when we're ready to go somewhere. He sorts garbage and recycling for me. He'll carry grocery bags home from the store. It's a point of pride for me. Let's just go. Wait. Hey, where's this going? We got a good life together.
Well, I certainly have a few chores that Jet can come over and do at my house. Have a wonderful night. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.